Okay, let's dive into one of the most pivotal and honestly dramatic final stands in all of history. This wasn't just a fight for land. It was a battle for the very soul of a nation caught between its ancient warrior traditions and a future that was rushing in, whether they liked it or not.
So what we're looking at here is the final climactic battle of the Satsuma Rebellion. The date is September 24th, 1877. Here, on this small hill overlooking the city of Kagoshima, the very last of the samurai are about to face Japan's new, modern army. And it's here that a way of life that had lasted for centuries would come to a bloody and very definitive end.
I mean, just look at the sheer imbalance of power here. It's almost unbelievable. On one side, you have the modern Imperial Army, 30,000 soldiers, armed with the latest rifles and heavy artillery. And on the other, the last remnants of the samurai, a mere 500 warriors, armed mostly with their swords because they had almost no ammunition left. The stage was absolutely set for a tragic and, let's be real, an inevitable conclusion.
So, you have to ask, how did it come to this? How did this proud, powerful warrior class, the symbol of Japan for centuries, end up cornered and outnumbered 60-1? Well, let's rewind a bit and look at the beginning of the end. Okay, so after a totally disastrous failed siege of Kumamoto Castle and a whole series of crushing defeats across Japan, Saigō's dwindling forces were on the run. They had no choice but to retreat all the way back to their home turf in Satsuma, making their last stand on this one hill, Shiroyama.
And wow, these numbers really tell a brutal story. In just 6 grueling months, Saigō's army was just decimated. Between combat losses and people just giving up and going home, his once formidable force of 20,000 warriors shrank down to this final desperate band of 500.
All right, so how did the Imperial Army decide to handle this? Did they charge in for a glorious final battle? No, they responded with the cold, calculated logic of modern warfare, ready to bring it all to bear on this last pocket of resistance.
The Imperial commander, a guy named General Yamagata, was incredibly patient. Instead of a risky head-on rush, he just built a cage. His troops spent days digging a complex system of earthworks, trenches, and barricades to completely encircle the hill. He was making absolutely sure there was no escape.
The plan itself was methodical, brutal, and tragically effective. First, use their massive numbers to completely surround and cut off the hill. Second, have warships in the nearby bay just relentlessly bombard their defenses. And finally, once the samurai were weakened and exhausted, launch a massive, simultaneous attack from all sides. Annihilation. And this order from General Yamagata, man, it tells you everything you need to know about his mindset. He was willing to sacrifice his own men to accept friendly fire just to guarantee that the rebellion was completely and utterly crushed. It was this absolutely ruthless determination to end it, no matter the cost.
Meanwhile, trapped on the hill, the samurai situation was just grim. They were critically short on everything. They got so desperate they started melting down metal statues just to cast their own bullets. And with no real medical supplies, they were forced to treat horrible wounds with things like a carpenter's saw. It's hard to even imagine.
The Imperial Army gave them one last chance to surrender. The offer was met with defiant silence. At that point, there were no options left. The final assault was set to begin with the rising sun.
The end came incredibly fast, all in the pre-dawn hours. After a devastating all-night artillery bombardment that just shook the entire hill, the Imperial troops started their attack at 4 a.m. Within an hour, the leader of the rebellion would fall. Within 2, it would all be over. In the very first moments of the attack, a volley of bullets hit the rebellion's iconic leader, Saigō Takamori. He went down, mortally wounded in his thigh and stomach. In that single instant, the heart of the resistance was effectively broken. So his most loyal follower, a man named Beppu Shinsuke, carried him to a quieter spot to perform the final ritual. As Saigō committed seppuku, that's ritual suicide by disembowelment, Beppu acted as his kaishakunin. That's the person whose job it is to perform a final, merciful cut, severing the head to end the suffering and, crucially, to make sure the enemy couldn't take it as a trophy.
After Saigō's death, Beppu took command of the handful of warriors who were still standing. And what did they do? They led one final, hopeless charge. With no bullets left, they just drew their swords and ran straight downhill, directly into the firing lines of thousands of Imperial guns.
It was a complete and total slaughter. The charge was cut down in a matter of moments. Not a single samurai survived. And just like that, the Battle of Shiroyama and the entire Satsuma Rebellion was over.
So why? Why does this completely one-sided battle from 1877 still capture our imagination so much? Well, this wasn't just the end of a battle. It was truly the end of an era. Let's take a look at the aftermath.
Well, for the new Meiji government, this victory came at a devastating financial cost. Crushing the rebellion cost a staggering 420 million yen. That's an amount so huge it actually forced Japan off the gold standard. They had to start printing massive amounts of paper money just to stay afloat.
The economic hit was just incredible. The country's national debt more than doubled, jumping from 28 million to 70 million pounds. Think about that. This one rebellion nearly bankrupted the entire nation. So yeah, they won, but at an absolutely immense price.
You know, if there was ever any lingering doubt, this battle erased it. It proved, without a shadow of a doubt, that a modern army made up of everyday conscripts with modern weapons could defeat the legendary samurai warriors. After Shiroyama, there was simply no going back.
And with this final bloody victory, the Meiji government's power became absolute. The threat of the old feudal clans rising up was permanently extinguished. This really paved the way for a new, centralized Japan to emerge on the world stage.
And with that, the samurai class itself was finished. It was over. Their military role was now obsolete, their special social privileges were gone, and their entire way of life, a life built on centuries of tradition and the code of Bushido, was now just history.
But here is where the story takes a truly fascinating, ironic twist. The man who led this rebellion, Saigō Takamori, was eventually pardoned, posthumously, by the very same government he fought against. Maybe they realized he wasn't fighting for personal gain, but for principles he truly believed in, which turned him into a tragic hero in the eyes of the people.
And this leaves us with a really interesting question, doesn't it? The samurai lost. Their cause was doomed from the start, and their defeat ushered in the modern age. So why do we, and why does Japan, still venerate them so much? It really makes you think about the stories we choose to tell ourselves and the powerful, enduring appeal of a noble, lost cause.